Hello and welcome back to the Google Workspace Update podcast from Strawberry 7. My name is Adam.
And my name is Adam.
We're here every week to bring you the latest updates happening around Google Workspace. This podcast is available in audio format from your regular podcast provider and also in video format on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/strawberry7.
Coming up on the show today,
we have 7 updates for you today. We've got updates to Google Sheets, Drive, Meet, Workspace, Voice, Admin, and one for Google Meet again. Let's get to it.
On with the show. Right, so first up this week, we've got an update for Google Sheets. So there's now improved filters in Google Sheets. So filters and filter views help you analyse a set of data in a spreadsheet, and to improve upon this widely used feature, Google has introduced 2 updates, so we've got a little 2 in 1 here. So first off, there will be a summary of the rows remaining after a filter is applied in Sheets. You will now see the number of rows that are displayed in the bottom right margin, helping you know immediately whether you are looking at the entire data set or just a subset of it. And secondly, with the new option to directly apply filters from the right-click menu, filters are now more accessible and discoverable. Simply right-click and apply filters directly to your data, removing them, or filter by the current cell value from the same menu.
Yeah, this is a really lovely update, and for everybody listening or watching, Adam has once again put in a very nice little picture, but this is actually kind of a GIF almost, or like a little movie of this feature in action. So I think this has come from the Google Update blog, hasn't it, Adam, this graphic?
Yes, that's right. I'd love to take credit for all the lovely graphics and things that I have in here, but no, yeah, you're quite right. This did come directly from Google.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is very helpfully being provided by Google, and I highly encourage you to check this graphic out. So as always, we put a link to the document in the description of the podcast or the description of the video on our YouTube channel, and that will link you through to the document that we read from. And in there's a nice little graphic showing you how this actually works. But for everybody listening, I will do sort of my best attempt to explain and expand on this a little bit more as to how this actually works in this graphic. The first update that Adam talked about there is just so useful because when you filter, in the bottom right hand corner, it basically just says you are viewing 6 rows of 54 or something like that, and it's filtered. So it's very, very clear when you've got a filter applied, as Adam said there. The other thing with the right click is, again, super easy, because in the example that they're using here, I think it's Argentina, isn't it? They're using as the the example data. Yeah, example data there. It's like a whole load of countries, I think. And in the example, they're just right clicking on Argentina and saying filter or show Argentina. So it just makes it super easy to be able to filter whilst working on the document rather than having to go into all the filtering options and things like that. So highly encourage you to have a look at the document there to see this in action. When can we expect to see this, Adam?
So this is rolling out to rapid release domains right now, and it is also going to be launched to scheduled release domains, which is planned for March the 15th. So that will just be a couple of days after this episode comes out.
Great, and not long to wait for that. That's brilliant. Thank you, Adam. What have we got next?
Next up, we have a Google Drive update. So you can now programmatically manage and apply Google Drive label taxonomy changes. So back in 2022, Google announced a highly requested update that allows admins and developers to programmatically manage labels at scale through Google Drive APIs. As a follow-up, the Drive Labels API now supports taxonomy management, enabling admins and developers to programmatically add, modify, delete, and publish label taxonomy changes.
Right, so Adam and I were talking about this update before we started recording. For anybody who's thinking, what on earth is taxonomy? No, it's nothing to do with taxes, which is what Adam and I thought it was to do with. The official description of taxonomy is the science of labels and classification. So this is a very fancy way of saying that Google has put groups and sort of sub-classifications into its labels. That's what we sort of have derived from what they've put here. Now, I think reading on this, Adam, this does seem to be mainly through the API, rather than necessarily something you can just go in and do through the GUI, for example, in the admin console. I mean, there aren't really any details here about how to get started with this or anything like that. But I think there were some details. I think there was actually a link to go through on the update blog that I saw, which maybe we can put into the document. I don't think it's there at the moment, but maybe we can put it in the document for our listeners. And that sort of went through to a little bit more explanation about the syntax that you could put into this API and things like that. Is that right?
Yes. That is correct.
Yeah, great. No problem. Who's this available for then, Adam?
Okay, so this is available right now, and it is available to Google Workspace Essentials, Business Standard, Business Plus, Enterprise Essentials, Enterprise Standard, Enterprise Plus, Education Plus, Education Standard, and non-profit customers.
I'm quite surprised in a way that that's available to so many levels, like for example Workspace Essentials, because I would have thought with this being an API that it would be more of an enterprise thing, but it was good that it's available to more platforms there. I guess the API is quite open, I suppose, to a lot of those other platforms. Thank you, Adam. What have we got next?
Up next, we've got an update to Google Meet. So expanding noise cancellation to phone participants. So this is very, very similar to a previous update that we've had. So for select Google Workspace editions, participants who dial in by phone will have background noise removed from their audio. This helps ensure phone participants are easier to hear and understand during meetings, while removing any potential disturbing sounds from the meeting.
Yeah, this is really a nice sort of development here, because the noise cancelling, we actually talked about this, I think, in the last podcast, didn't we, about some advancements with the noise cancellation. And obviously that's great whilst you're in an actual Google meeting, but if you join on a phone, then you haven't had that feature enabled, but now it's great because you've potentially got that on your phone. Now, I know a lot of phones, especially iPhones and things like that, do have very good noise cancellation software within them when you're on calls and things like that anyway, because they've got very, very good microphones and they're very directional. But this is just nice having this extra layer in there, and it really shows the advantage, I suppose, of having things like these noise cancellation features being based as software rather than hardware. There's always a debate, right, around hardware versus software, and yes, hardware definitely gives you a more definitive experience and can be a lot better, but software is definitely more flexible, because then you can just add
software can be updated.
Yeah, it can be updated, absolutely, and it can be added onto virtually anything. So yeah, it's a really interesting use of the noise cancellation software that's built in there. Thank you, Adam. That's great. And who is that going to be available for?
So this update is also available right now, and it's going to be available to Business Standard, Business Plus, Enterprise Essentials, Enterprise Standard, Enterprise Plus, Education Plus, the Teaching and Learning Upgrade, and frontline customers.
Okay, brilliant. That's wonderful. So quite a lot of availability there, which is good. Thank you very much, Adam. What have we got next?
Next up, we've got quite a large update, really, for Google Workspace. So there's a refreshed interface for Google Drive, Google Docs, Google Sheets, and Google Slides. So in the coming weeks, you'll notice a new look and feel for Google Drive, Docs, Sheets and Slides on the web. Following the release of Google Material Design 3, the refreshed user interface is purposefully designed to streamline core collaboration journeys across Google's products. In Docs, Sheets and Slides, you'll see improvements such as a simplified user interface at the top of your Docs, Sheets and Slides, helping you find frequently used actions faster, additional user experience improvements in commenting, background, rulers and grid lines. Note that while there are no changes to any functionality, some features have been relocated to reduce clutter within the new interface. Notably, you can find the latest status info for the docs, such as the last edit and version history, via a single entry point, which is the clock icon on the top right corner of the document.
Great, that's really nice. Again, there's a really nice picture here showing the new interface, and it definitely looks really slick. Really sort of modern. I mean, they haven't changed too much, but it just does look very, very clean and very, very nice. And I think one of the things that I like the most about this is, which I believe is new, is in the comments, it's kind of how it's collapsing the replies. So you don't end up with sort of seeing all of the replies in one massive kind of chain in the comments on the side.
Yes, absolutely. Another thing that I noticed with this, which isn't actually directly related to this update, but I definitely wanted to give it a mention anyway. So we've mentioned previously there was the announcement for the option to view non-printing characters in Google Docs. Surprise! That feature is now available. So I just so happened to notice for me, I noticed this change came to my own Google Workspace. I think it was around Thursday afternoon or so, because I had some documents open on Thursday morning, and they were using the previous one. When I came back to the same document, I think it was actually after our meeting that we had on Thursday morning, I went back to the documents I already had open, and they all looked different. But I also noticed that the option to view non-printing characters is now there and available. So I had a quick look online, and Google provided a quick little update for that on March the 6th, saying that rollout has resumed. All rapid release and scheduled release domains will have access to the feature of being able to view non-printable characters by March the 10th, which is today, day of recording. So if that is something that you're wanting to do, simply click on View at the top of your Google Doc, and then select View Non-Printing Characters. So just as a quick test, Adam, so we both have this same document open. I've just selected to view the non-printing characters for my own view right now. Can you see that at your end or not?
No, that hasn't changed, Adam, and this is a really excellent little update that you've sort of squeezed in here. I think this is really good follow-on from our previous updates and really useful to our listeners. So thank you for mentioning this. And no, I can't see the non-printable characters with you turning it on, but I do have the option to turn it on myself in View, Show Non-Printing Characters, and when I click that, sure enough, they all come up, and it's very similar to how it was in Microsoft Word. So if you are a Microsoft Word user and you've been used to seeing that non-printable characters sort of system, then I think this will look very familiar to you. And that does answer our question that we posed before with whether it would do it for the document or whether it would do it for the user. It does do it for the user rather than the whole document. Again, I think personally a big advantage of using a system like Google, because it's more personal to you. You might want to view non-printable characters, but a colleague that you work with might not want to. So I think that's very nice.
Absolutely, yes. So it's great to see that feature is working in a very similar way that we expected, and it's even better that it is actually now available. Not too sure what the delay was, but it is now available to everybody, which is great. Okay, so moving on with this update. So I just mentioned Docs, Sheets and Slides, but changes to Google Drive, you will see improvements such as key actions surfaced inline on files for quick access and increased productivity, the ability to select multiple items at a time and undertake batch operations for frequent tasks, I actually thought that was already available. I'm sure I've selected multiple documents before to move them all into one folder or something along those lines before, but that is included in this update. There's also new search chips, including type, owner, and last modified, to help you find files faster. These key visual and interactive design changes will help you get your best work done faster by emphasising the tools within Google's products that are used most frequently.
Again, there's a lovely little graphic showing how a lot of this is working in Google Drive, and some really good examples here. And I think, again, some of these these little advancements are just so useful. The inline sort of search that they mention there is basically when you're in, like the example I give here, when you're in My Drive, there's just a little button at the top that says file type, and another one that says last modified, another one that says people. So you can just click on file type and say show me all the PDFs, which is just so handy, so useful to be able to do that quick filtering.
I think before they changed that, you'd probably have to search for something such as literally type in the words file type : PDF or something along those lines.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is the thing, people just don't necessarily know how to use those search terms, and people don't necessarily realise, again, for any of our listeners who are not aware, if you're in Google Drive, there's a search bar at the top where it says search in Drive. If you just look to the right of that, there's sort of it kind of almost looks like an abacus, doesn't it, Adam? It's like a whole load of lines. Yep. with different sort of points on. And if you click on that, that will give you the search options, and there's a multitude of different search options that you can do to give you very, very powerful search criteria in there to be able to search for exactly what you're looking for. But people don't necessarily know it's there, and it isn't that obvious, and it's good to have these little buttons in line there. So when are we going to see that? And I just wanted to comment a little bit before we moved on to who this is available for with the rollout pace here.
Okay, so this is going to be available to all Google Workspace customers as well as legacy G Suite Basic and Business customers. This is also going to be available to users with a personal Google account.
Okay, so what's interesting here is it says that the rapid release is available starting on 6th of March, and then scheduled release is March 22nd, right? Maybe it's the fact that it says starting on March the 6th, because the reason I say that is because we are now on rapid release, as we turned this on a few podcasts ago now to test out some of these new features. But I just went into Google Drive and I couldn't see any of these new sort of features, because I wanted to have a quick look at that batch feature that you were talking about, because it's the same. I thought to myself, I'm pretty sure I've selected stuff and done batch operations before. I wanted to see what they were changed in there, but I can't see any of the new features. So maybe it's because it says it's starting on March the 6th. Maybe we just haven't gotten to it yet.
Yes, that's right. So, as I mentioned before, I think it was Thursday when I noticed this change, which was yesterday. That was the 9th. So although it actually started on March the 6th, I didn't see any changes at all until the 9th. Also, when the updates start to get pushed out, it can take up to about 15 days for them to complete.
No problem. Okay, that's very interesting. The last point I wanted to say about that before moving on, just going back to the beginning of this update, Adam mentioned that this is following the release of Google Material Design 3. If you're not familiar with that, then I definitely recommend that you have a little look at it, because there's a link in the document that we provide to Google Material Design 3 and what that is. And I just had a quick look, and there's some very interesting things that Google are offering in this sort of open platform that they've got for, I believe, web developers. I believe it's kind of a web platform, and there was some very interesting sort of developments that they'd put in there for some amazing things that you could do with Google Material Design 3. So interesting to check that out as well, especially if you're a developer.
Yeah, I hadn't really heard of Google Material Design 3 before until this update came out, but I did think with this update it was a bit of a cheeky way for Google to plug this new platform amongst with this update.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, they're always trying to plug their stuff on their own update channel. How dare they?
I know, right?
Lovely. Thank you, Adam. What have we got next?
Up next, we have a Google Voice update. So you can now indicate your Google Voice availability with more options. So Google is making it easier for you to indicate your availability in Google Voice on web and mobile. Previously, you could only indicate your availability for all of your ring groups. This update gives you greater flexibility to manage your ring group availability in Google Voice without the need to sign out of Voice or block all incoming calls using Do Not Disturb. So you can now customize your availability for whether that's all calls, direct calls, or calls from a specific ring group.
This is a really, really clever update, actually, of being able to, like you say, set your availability based on who is contacting you. The best example I could think of this was that you could set all the calls from your boss to go straight to voicemail, whereas when Karen from finance is phoning you with some juicy gossip, you'd send that straight through on your speed dial, to come straight through. It's like, it is a really good way of being able to control your flow, because even using the examples that they've given here, again, there's a really handy picture showing how this works. There may very often be those situations where you don't want to have direct calls externally, but you do need to take a call from somebody in the sales team or from marketing or something because you're expecting that call coming in. So it's so handy to be able to filter those calls out as and when you need to. I suppose kind of one of the easiest things to comparisons to make in a way. I mean, you couldn't really use Google Voice for this, I don't think, but the easiest way to think about it is like, it's almost like if you're expecting a call from your doctor and you don't want anyone else to call, right? If your doctor's calling, a hospital's calling or something important, and you kind of want to almost say, take calls from this number, no one else. I don't want anyone else to call me. It's along those sorts of lines, isn't it?
Yes, absolutely. And just as you say, yeah, I can definitely see how this will be very helpful and definitely help some people stay on task as well, as you say. So whilst you're during working hours, you only want to receive calls from certain people or certain departments or something like that. So then it can just help you avoid potential interruptions from anyone else.
Yeah, I completely agree. How do people get started with this, Adam, and what's the kind of rollout and everything?
Okay, so for the admins, there's actually no admin control for this feature at all, and a rapid release and scheduled release started on March the 6th, and so because this is a Google Voice update, this is only going to be available to Google Voice Standard and Premier customers, so it's not going to be generically available to everyone that's using Google Workspace. It's very much just for those Google Voice customers.
Absolutely, yeah, that makes complete sense. And we've actually talked about this a few times before, haven't we? How Google Voice is one of the rare elements of Google Workspace that's actually a sort of different paid tier to Google Workspace. Pretty much everything else is included in your core package, but Google Voice sits as a bit of a different thing, which makes sense because it's effectively a telephone plan. So
yes, yeah, absolutely.
Sense. Lovely. What have we got next, Adam?
So next up, this is definitely an update for the admins out there. So managed Android devices must upgrade to Android device policy during March 2023. So we're in March 2023 right now. So we do not have a specific date for this, but it is this month. So if this update applies to you, I would highly recommend that you move forward with this pretty much as soon as possible, really. So, back in 2019, Google announced that a new Android management client, which is Android device policy, would replace the legacy Google Apps device policy client. Google is now in the final stages of that upgrade. So all devices with the Google Apps device policy will lose access during March 2023 if they have not already upgraded. So as I say, we do not have a specific date for that, which I was a bit curious why, because we're in March right now, so it's at our doorstep. But existing Google Apps device policy app users must switch to Android device policy before then to continue syncing work data. Note that per Google's last update, the new user registration flow on the legacy Google Apps device policy will be blocked, and users may see errors during the registration process as of January 2022. admins can act directly from the alert in the Google Admin Console to identify users who need to upgrade.
Okay, so at least there is a alert in the admin console, and again, that's in the graphic that we've included in the document that says whether people need to take action on this and whether they need to upgrade this. From what I could see, this is basically for anybody who is, I believe, managing Android devices through Google Admin Console. I think that's who it's targeting, really, isn't it? So yeah, Adam's absolutely right. If you are managing Android devices through the admin console or through Google Workspace, then please do take action on this, because as Adam says, it's just saying during March 2023. There's no specific date.
Is that today? Is that tomorrow? Is it next week?
Who knows? Who knows? Maybe Google could let us know. So how do people actually get started with this? What do they do?
Okay, so admins can find devices which may need to act in the admin console. Different devices may need to take different steps to upgrade. So for the advanced management devices, you can find advanced management devices by going to the Google Admin Console, then mobile devices and filtering for type, Android and management, then level, advanced. Determine which of these devices are currently managed by the Google Apps Device Policy app and support the Android Device Policy app. For example, devices with Android 6 Plus and support for a work profile. You can send instructions to users to help them migrate to Android Device Policy. And once again, I've added a link into our documents on this podcast to help everybody with that. For basic management devices, a very similar process. You can find basic management devices by going to the Google Admin Console, mobile devices and filtering for type, Android and management, then level, basic. You can instruct users of those devices to upgrade the Android OS to version 6.0 Marshmallow or later.
Great. Okay, no problem. And what's the sort of rollout phase here? Although we've sort of hinted at it already.
So devices on the old agent will lose access during March 2023. So this is this month. Android device policy is now available, and all users should upgrade to avoid disruption.
Great. And I think this is available, or it's sort of across the board, right? Is that right?
Yeah, so this change impacts Google Workspace customers who use basic and advanced mobile management.
Yeah, so that goes back to what we were saying about anybody who's using those who's using that management of those mobile devices in their admin console should definitely check that. Thank you very much, Adam, for those detailed instructions. And as we've said a few times now, the document is linked in the description of the podcast and linked in the description of the video on our YouTube channel, and that will give you all of these links on the instructions that you can send out and all the details about how to find that and the filters that Adam was talking about there. Thank you very much, Adam. I think this is our last update now, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right. So last update for this week is to do with Google Meet. So there's now new updates for Google Meet on Poly Android-based appliances. So Google is rolling out updates to Google Meet to support their upcoming launch of Google Meet on Poly Android-based appliances. Within the Google Admin Console, admins can enroll Poly devices and include reporting of these new appliances. The Google Meet hardware experience will become available in the upcoming Poly OS 4.0 update as part of the Poly Studio X series family. This update will become available over the next few weeks. However, customers and admins can try out this experience ahead of the official Poly OS 4.0 launch by downloading the current beta candidate for their Studio X series device. For more information, please reach out to your Poly account team or reseller. The Google Meet hardware experience will be available on the Poly Studio X series family once they have been updated to Poly OS 4.0. Admins can enroll these devices and manage them as part of their regular Google Admin Console experience. The Poly Studio X family offers appliances of all sizes, such as the Studio X30 for small rooms, the Studio X50 for medium rooms, and the Studio X70 for larger rooms. This update will make it easier for customers currently using the Studio X line to switch to Google Meet from other conferencing platforms. It also offers new customers more choice and flexibility in their hardware options for Google Meet. Google Meet on Poly Android appliances requires a Google Meet hardware license, and these can be purchased through authorized resellers. So please contact your existing Google Meet hardware or Poly reseller for more information about that.
Great, that's fantastic, Adam. Thank you. I don't really have much to comment on that. I mean, I think you've covered it all in the update. There's some lovely pictures of what these Poly devices look like, and they kind of remind me of like a soundbar with a camera in the middle of them. I mean, I think that's pretty much what they are, because they've sort of got speakers and everything built into them, haven't they?
Yes, that's right. So I'm thinking this could potentially be really helpful. So we see it quite a lot at our schools, particularly if there's like a staff inset or something like this, where you have a large group of your staff come together to all receive some training, and there's often one person stood right at the front, and the meeting or the training session might be virtual, or there may be someone there in person. But if it is virtual, then a device like this would definitely help capture the entire room and let everybody's voice be heard, because quite often you may just have one little microphone right at the front, and either you'd have like a designated speaker, or people really have to shout to be heard or be seen. So I think a device like this really caters to a situation like that, where there's for larger meetings, where it's not lots and lots of people on the same meeting, but lots of people in the same physical room that are on a meeting.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember during the pandemic with the schools, there was a particular device. I can't even remember the name of it, but I think you will remember this, and it just sold out everywhere because it was the only device that kind of was this little thing that you could plug in. It had the speaker and it had the microphone and everything built in, and it had a sort of hang up button built directly into it and things like that. And it was the simplest little device, but the schools just absolutely loved it because they could plug it in, and suddenly they didn't have this issue that was going on so much at the time, where when the speaker and the microphone were separate, there was this horrible echoing feedback and everything that was going on with Google Meet. I mean, that's since been, kind of resolved quite a lot. But you're absolutely right. These devices just make it so easy. You just buy this device, pop it on the top of your screen, and it's got everything built into it. It's got the speakers, the microphone, the camera, everything's just built into one device. It's very much a kind of plug and play and just use device, isn't it?
Yes, absolutely. So I think the device that you just were referring to, I can't remember the exact name of that, but I do remember it was kind of like small and round. I believe it had multiple directional microphones, so then if you're having a meeting around a table, stick it in the middle of the table, and then it could pick up the voice of individual users. So that was great in a situation where you are all gathered around a table, whereas this hardware for this update that we're seeing, that's something you can put right at the front of a room to pick up everyone that's inside it, so you wouldn't need to all be huddled around it, for example.
Absolutely, yeah. Really cool looking little devices. And they look really nice as well. They don't look obtrusive at all. So that's really cool. Lovely. How do people get started with this, Adam?
Okay, so for the admins, Studio X series appliances will need to be updated to Poly OS 4.0 via the Poly admin settings page in order to select Google Meet as the conferencing partner application. Once updated, the conferencing partner is set to Google Meet. Follow the on-screen prompts to enroll the device into Google Meet hardware admin console. Google Meet on Poly Android appliances require a Google Meet hardware license, so please reach out to a Google Meet hardware reseller in order to purchase your license to use that. And for the end users, there's no action required. Once a Studio X series device has been successfully enrolled, you can join Google meetings normally.
Okay, no problem at all. It would be quite interesting to see what the experience is like when you're joining a meeting, because these devices they do kind of include a lot together, but you still need a computer of some kind, I assume, to sort of run with them. So I'm guessing that when you join the meeting, it's just saying, oh, your microphone and your speaker and your camera are all the Poly X device, and I guess that's how it sort of looks. There is a bit of a picture there below the Poly devices, but it doesn't really, it's quite small. I don't know if it actually shows what the devices look like when they come up. I just zoomed in a bit, but I think it's more just showing you a Google Meet, a sort of adjoining page of a Google Meet.
Yeah. So we're not overly familiar with the Poly or all these particular devices, so I wasn't too sure. Maybe we need to look it up. What we can see in the graphic, it looks like there's a little tablet with a Google Meet session on there. I don't know if that's something that would be included within the hardware bundle. So it is your all-in-one, well, all-in-two, essentially package for your Google Meet. Or, as you say, maybe that's just showing you a computer screen or a device screen, so then you could see what it would look like. So, yeah, not too sure about that.
Absolutely. Or maybe what they're saying here is because it's, you're updating the OS and you're including the license, maybe this Poly device literally connects to the Wi-Fi or has an Ethernet cable in the back and literally has Google Meet built into it effectively, and you can just go on a meeting even without a computer. You literally just plug this Poly device into the power, you connect it to the network, and then you can just go on to a meeting, and you kind of interface with it through a tablet somehow or something like that. I don't know how you would tell it to join that particular meeting, but it's quite interesting. I think Adam's right. We probably need to have a little bit more of a look into how these Poly devices work, because we just don't have one. So we're sort of going on what Google's put here. But if you do have one, key is here to update to Poly OS 4, and then you'll be able to use these new features. When are we going to be able to see that, Adam, and who's that available for?
Okay, so a rapid release and scheduled release began on March the 9th, and this is going to be available on Poly X30, X50 and X70 devices, with support for additional Poly devices that will be added over time. This is also going to be available to all Google Workspace customers, as well as legacy G Suite Basic and Business customers.
Lovely. Thank you so much, Adam. Really great going through all of those updates. There's some really, really nice updates in there that I think people will really appreciate. Well, that's it, everybody. That's everything you need to know that's happening around the latest updates of Google Workspace. Thank you all so much, as always, for listening. Really, really appreciate all of our listeners out there. Please remember that this podcast is available from your regular podcast provider in audio format, or available on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/strawberry7. Thank you so much for joining us this week.
We'll be back again next week with more updates.
Goodbye.
Bye.